The Carveth Empire had a pretty unique way of conquering planets. Instead of blasting military targets with orbital strikes and then sending in soldiers backed up by fighters and armored vehicles to defeat the remaining sapients on the planets of interest, they would instead drop genetically created war beasts onto the planet and then return in a year or two to take over once the sapients had been slaughtered. It was a quite effective tactic and had been used for over 364 years, since they found a planet full of ferocious beasts they were able to retrieve samples from with a great loss of life. After tinkering with their genes, the beasts were put to use in cleansing planets. A small genetic change to ensure that the beasts would die after 15 months without a specific chemical compound only found on their home planet, and they had the perfect weapons. Until they found a planet named Dirt or Ground or something. The seeding ship slipped into the planet's atmosphere under full stealth mode and relied only on passive sensors to ensure the primitives would not detect even the slightest hint of electronic noise. As the ship circled the planet mapping the various land masses, they dropped landing pods with the war beast cargo in efficient locations. Not too close to large population centers but not too far away that the beasts couldn't get to them. The pods were the only technical connection to the Carveth Empire, and unfortunately they had to have a certain level of technology in them to safely land and release the beasts. But the commanders of the Empire decided that the risk of the primitives finding and using the pods was very low due to them having to deal with the hordes of war beasts rampaging through their cities. Once the ship had delivered the last pod, mapped the last frozen continent, and determined where the major population centers were, they signaled the pods to release the beasts, and then the ship left orbit and warped out for the main fleet to continue their planning for the new acquisition in a year's time. Sally and her little brothers were wandering in the forest again looking for something to defeat the boredom of school vacation. They were getting under their parents' feet a bit too much, so they were told to go out and play, giving them the freedom to go a bit further than their parents expected. They had decided to go deeper into the woods instead of down to the beach, and things were getting a bit quieter than usual. The normal animal sounds had been lacking and it made the forest feel weird. Usually, there were birds singing and small animals scurrying in the leaves, but today there was more of a waiting feel to the forest. As they came to a creek, Sally noticed a weird-looking pile of purple fur or something on the far bank. It looked like an animal, but there was something off about it to her eyes and she felt a bit scared. Of course, as soon as they saw the strange animal, her brothers went splashing through the creek to get as close to it as they could. "Frank, Robert, come back here. It could be dangerous." "Nah, sis. It's hurt. I can see something oozing out of its leg." "Hey Frank, how many legs does this have?" "I can see 6 legs." "Yeah. What animal has 6 legs?" "I know insects have 6 legs and spiders have 8, but this isn't an insect or spider, it's got fur or something like fur." "Sally, what is this animal?" Sally went over to her brothers to make sure they were safe. She was their elder sister and that was her job. As she got closer, she could see that the boys were right and this animal had 6 legs. The legs looked slightly different from the dog's legs she knew about and the fur didn't look right either. The fur looked like it was trying to change color but was too weak and went back to the purple color she first saw. As she got to her brothers, she could see the animal was panting and had an injury on a couple of its legs. The blood was a strange orangish color and nothing like she knew about. The beast started to whine and it looked so pitiful that Sally felt sorry for it even though it was so strange looking. It didn't look like a cat, dog, dingo, kangaroo, or any of the animals she had seen at the zoo or home or even seen in pictures in her books. The strangest part is that it had 6 legs and was purple. Sally didn't know what to do and was feeling like she should get an adult to come out when her brothers decided to try and pick it up. The animal tried to snarl when they picked it up, but it didn't sound good and soon just whimpered and panted in what Sally thought was pain. At this, she told her brothers to put it down and get a bandage out of their emergency kit. Basically, it was just a small bag with some matches, bandages, a space blanket, and plastic bags that they carried with them everywhere. She told the boys to get some water in the plastic bag so she could clean up the wounds and then bandage them, then they would see about carrying it home for their parents to look at. It took them a couple of hours to return home, but all three kids made it with their find, and as they came up the track to the house, their father walked around the corner and saw them. "Okay, you kids. What do you have there? It better be something important to bring it home, or your mother is going to give you a good talking to." "Dad, we found a strange animal. It was wounded and we bandaged it, but we thought we better bring it to you because it is weird." "What do you mean weird?" "Well, it's purple and has 6 legs." "What the hell? Are you kids joking with me? Because it isn't funny to lie like that." "No, Dad. We really did find a purple animal. It's got 6 legs and 2 of them are wounded. It's weak, so we gave it some water and brought it back. It's funny because it doesn't really feel as heavy as what it looks like." "Okay, let's have a look at your beast. And it better be purple or there's going to be a lack of TV for all 3 of you for a few days." Well, a few minutes later and the TV time was saved, but Dad was seriously shocked and called for Sharon to come out quick smart and bring the phone. Their mother came out asking why she had to bring the phone, and she came to a complete stop when she saw a heap of purple fur laying on a couple of space blankets with a couple of white bandages around a couple of legs. 20 minutes later, and after answering all the normal questions about where, when, who, what, why, and repeating the answers when the questions repeated, the final decision was to call the vet to come out and see if he knew what the heck they were dealing with. The kids brought the animal up to the veranda and put it down on a couple of old blankets out of the sun with some water. They wanted to get some food for it, but no one knew what it ate and whether it would be allergic to anything. The vet arrived after a long 45 minutes and was curious why he was summoned. After 5 minutes of staring, his training kicked in and he started to examine the beast. He asked Sharon and Adam to help him and was getting Sally to write down notes as he thought of them during his examination. "Okay, Sally, the beast is covered in what looks to be purple fur, but it is trying to change color like a chameleon. The beast is too weak from the look of it to be able to complete the color change, and thus it is defaulting, staying this purple color. Adam, can you help me turn it over gently? That's it. Sharon, can you get me an old cloth and wet it down so we can wash it to check for any more injuries? Yeah, that's it. I can see some scrapes and what look like bruises, but I can't see indications of any broken bones. Sally, write down that the animal has 6 legs with 4 distinct sections in each leg. It means it has 2 knees and a very weird gait. Gait, that means its way of moving. Thank you, Sally. Boys, can you grab my brown bag out of the car? I've got some different foods there and we need to see what it thinks is good to eat. It's a bit skinny looking and I don't know if that's natural or not. It could be starving due to its injuries preventing it from hunting. Oh yeah. It's a carnivore. See these sharp teeth? They look similar to cat and dog teeth, but not quite. Okay boys. Grab the jerky and a can of the wet cat food. We'll see if we can tempt it to eat them. And then we just hope that it doesn't have a reaction to the food. The animal slowly sniffed at the food and then started to gulp it down. Starving was a good guess. After watching it eat for a while, it slowly seemed to gain more energy, and attempted to sit up. A whimper when it used its injured legs was heard, but once up, it was eating much better and not as fast as it was. As it finished the food, it looked around at the people watching it and started to purr. It wasn't a cat purr, but it was a repeating pattern of soft chuffs, and Sally was enthralled. Before her parents could do anything to stop her, she knelt down and started to scratch the animal behind its ears. She had a bit of trouble there because it had 3 of them, but finally she found out that the central ear was the most receptive to a good scritch while the others loved a gentle rub. Well, after that, they had a pet. It stood up and followed Sally as she went inside the house, and while it liked everyone else, Sally was its master. 2 weeks later, there were a lot of stories on the news reporting people around the world finding a lot of these strange purple beasts. A lot of them were found dead due to injuries, fights with other animals, or accidents on the roads. But there were a lot more found that were still alive. Sally and her brothers now had a pack of 5 of the beasts, as 4 new ones had arrived on the veranda in the days after they brought back Prince. Hey, it was purple and Prince was named by Sally and Sharon. The boys knew enough not to object when the women had spoken. Anyway, the pack had grown and Adam and Sharon were happy that they didn't eat anything close to what a dog would have. They weren't hunting the wildlife either, so they were even happier to not have to spend a lot of money on animal food. Frank the vet had been around just about every day and was extremely excited to see the new members of what they called the Phillips pack. Frank had taken some tissue samples along with all types of samples including pee and poop, which set the boys off into laughter when he was collecting it. Frank called early that morning and said he had some news and results and wanted to come out and talk with everyone, so keep the kids and pack close by as it involved the animals. Once Frank arrived and gave the pack a round of ear rubs, he sat down and started to explain what he had found out. The DNA samples were rushed because I sent them to the University of Queensland, and I told the professors there that these were a new species of animal, they were not terrestrial and they needed to get ahead of everyone else so they can publish their results first. That last bit is what got them to really rush things, and they sent me the results late last night. First off, these animals are not related to any Earth species. They aren't dogs, cats, or anything close. They believe they may be the first actual alien species ever discovered. And that scared them. And here is where it gets interesting. They found out that these animals had been genetically altered. That means that someone experimented on them, kids, and changed them from what they originally were. They got in touch with various other researchers overseas and even down south, and they started to figure out that the animals had been altered to require trace amounts of vitamin A to stay healthy. Without it, they would continue to get sicker and sicker until they finally died. As luck would have it, the food we have for them contains enough vitamin A to keep them healthy, and as you can see, they are all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. As you saw on TV, there are reports of these animals being found everywhere. The only locations where they haven't shown up is in Antarctica and in the deserts. And people have been looking into why that is, and we have discovered some very concerning things. First off is that these animals have been concentrated around population centers. The more people, the more likely that they will be found nearby. Luckily there is no report of anyone being attacked by any animal. No matter if they were uninjured, they would simply sit or lay down near the person and wait for them to react. And we all know how people react, don't we? Anyway, here is a list of foods that we think will be best for them. Keep me updated on how things are going, and if it's alright, I'll come back in a week just to check them out. Sally, boys, look after your pack, okay? Yes, yep, yeah. 6 months later on, and the various governments had announced that the discovery of strange ships in the areas where the hexadogs had been discovered. They announced that they had found evidence that the hexadogs were supposed to be an invasion force, but something had gone wrong. No one had ever found a hexadog to attack a human except under extreme circumstances. And in each and every incident, it was found that someone had tried to harm someone the hexadog had bonded with. Anyone with a hex was seen as having a lifelong protector. But they were not just mindlessly attacking the attackers, they would drive them off and then return to protect their owner. And quite a few people or families had 2 or more hexes. People were starting to talk about them being as smart as dolphins or whales in their own way because they didn't need to be called off, they would stop on their own. And when the puppies started to appear, the world went nuts for the Hex puppies. They were just the cutest little things with their fur turning all different colors and shades. Yeah, that nailed it for everyone. The Health Hexa dogs could change their fur to any color or shade they wanted to. Chameleons had nothing on a Hex who wanted to play hide. The kids loved them and the parents knew that they couldn't have a better protector. 17 months after the Carveth ship had sneaked into Earth's atmosphere to deliver their lethal cargo, a war fleet arrived in Jupiter orbit. They didn't want to come out too close just in case they ran into autonomous defensive installations, but close enough to see how things were going on the planet. Except this time something went wrong. Upon exiting warp space, alarms started going off on all ships to warn of multiple warp signatures closing in on the fleet. As the fleet admiral started trying to bring order out of chaos, a comms officer cried out that a message was being broadcast towards the fleet. To the fleet who just entered Sol system territory, cut your shields and engines and await our arrival. You failed to kill us and we are not happy at your attempt. The only saving grace you have is that we want to know where you found our new pets. Surrender now and we will be merciful. Don't and things will be ugly. The fleet admiral just stared at the image of the human commander as they sat in a chair, patting a war beast sitting next to them.